All right, welcome back to Coop's Collection. Today I wanted to share with you all a way to value your trading cards. So going to be looking at some Pokemon card examples, but you can really use these methods for most cards, as well as slabs or graded cards. So the first thing about understanding the value of cards is the fact that the condition of a card is really the main component that dictates its value. And that's why you're going to see a lot of cards sell for different prices that are the same card, but varying degrees of how much they're selling for. So we want to start off by understanding card condition. Card condition is what's going to dictate the value of your cards. There's 4 key conditions you need to understand: near mint, lightly played, moderately played, and heavily played. If you hear terms like gem or gem mint, that's something that people are going to use to describe a graded card that's in the highest grade it can get. When you're talking about ungraded cards, the industry standard is to describe them as near mint / mint, but usually near mint, lightly played, moderately played, and heavily played. And those are all abbreviated just by NM, LP, MP, or HP. So when you start looking on eBay or different marketplaces, you may see the full near mint, lightly played, whatever the condition is spelled out, or you might see the abbreviation. You can even see it here on this page where it says cards in lightly played LP condition. So the link for this is the TCG Player Condition Guide. The link for this is going to be in the video description. Check it out. Take a look at understanding what does it mean if my card is near mint, lightly played, whatever. You're going to inaccurately condition your cards, and that's okay. We all made those same mistakes when we started collecting. You're not going to look at a card and immediately know this is light played, this is moderately played, this is near mint. It takes time. It takes practice. And so don't feel bad if you think a card is near mint and it's actually light played. As you get a hold of more cards, as you look at more cards, you'll start to get better. You'll get a better eye at kind of what we would call pre-grading of a trading card. So once you understand conditions, you can start to figure out what condition are my cards in, and now I can go and compare them to cards in similar conditions to understand their value. The next thing we need to understand is my card considered vintage or modern? And those two distinctions are going to play into where we're going to go try to find the value of these cards. For Pokemon vintage, it's really anything I'm just going to put a bit of an arbitrary date, but not so much. It's kind of anything before 2010 at this point. Some people will consider vintage as the first couple of sets that were published by Wizards of the Coast before the Pokemon Company took over printing of Pokemon cards. So there's a couple sets that were printed by Wizards of the Coast that some people say those are the vintage sets. But as time passes, more sets kind of start to fall into that vintage sphere. If you have modern cards, that's something that's been released within the last 5 to 10 years. You might hear the term ultra modern. Ultra modern just means that it's basically something you could go pick up a pack at Target or Walmart or in a store very easily because it's still product that's on the shelves. Ultra modern is really within the last 1 to 2 years, but that's not really going to change how we're valuing the difference between ultra modern and modern. Those are all going to be found kind of in the same place. Let's start with modern cards because that's really going to be the easiest set of cards to identify their value. Where I like to go to look at values for modern cards is tcgplayer.com. On tcgplayer.com, you can search for a card. So let's say we're going to look for a modern Sylveon card. So we're going to look for Sylveon. And if you have a card, a way to determine which card it is to look at the name and then look at the set number to see what set it's from. So we're just going to search for Sylveon and see what cards come up. You can figure out which of these cards am I trying to find the value of. And then it has the details around it. So we know that if we look at this first one, it's a promo card and the promo number is SWSH211, and you would confirm that is what you're seeing on your card. And that's going to be either on the bottom left or the bottom right. So let's pretend that we have a Hidden Fates Shiny Vault Sylveon GX. You're going to look at it and you're going to see 2 prices. You're going to see listings that are available, and then you're going to see a market price. We're going to go ahead and click into that. And then you're going to see a direct by TCG player price. The direct by TCG player is always a much higher price than the market price and the listed prices, because that's a special service where sellers can send their cards to TCG to basically store for them and sell for them without the seller themselves having to deal with their inventory. So you can see that direct by TCG player is sold by the Cashapp BST. So the Cashapp sent TCG their cards to then be sold. So I just ignore this direct by TCG player price, but it's the first one you see, so it confuses some people. Then you're going to see you've got market price, listed median price. This is where it gets a little iffy on what some people do versus others. I'm going to tell you what I do, and then I'm going to leave it up to you all to figure out how you would like to best handle a market price that's listed versus what's available to buy today. My understanding of the market price, actually, let's click on this. So it says the TCG market price is the price point compiled from recent sales completed on tcgplayer.com. So as cards are sold on TCG, so as people buy copies of this Sylveon, the market price updates. The thing is, if no one's buying the card, the price isn't updating. So if the market price is $85 because people were buying it at $85 and now the card has dropped, unless people start buying it at the lower price, the market price isn't going to change. So what I like to do is I come down here and I look at all the different listings. We're going to filter it because we're going to say, hey, we've determined that we have a near mint Sylveon. So I'm going to filter on the condition over here, and we're going to look at all the listings for near mint. So the very lowest listing available, and he's got 2 copies. He says, I'm selling near mint holofoils for $99.94. Then there's another seller who says, I'm selling it for $99.95. So basically, if you look at the first 4 listings, they're all $100. Then you start to see 102, 105, 105. So what we're seeing here is that the available price is actually higher than the market price, because the market price says it's $85. And so when that happens, what that is basically saying is that the Sylveons have been bought out up through a median price of $85. So you can make the argument one of 2 ways. You can say, hey, the market price is $85 because that's what people have been buying it at, and no one's willing to pay $99.94, and that's why that hasn't sold yet. Or you can say, the lowest listing available is $99. You can't get it for cheaper than that, so I'm going to sell mine for $99. That's really, at the end of the day, going to be up to you. What you can do, and this is going to be the process we're going to go through for vintage stuff, is we can then go to eBay and look at eBay sold listings and determine what are they selling for on eBay. So let's go ahead and do that, because that's going to help us as we look at the vintage stuff too. So we're going to go to eBay, and we're going to go back to the Sylveon because we want to look at the details. We know it's a Sylveon GX. The way we want to search on eBay is we want to type in Sylveon GX, which is our card. It might auto-populate. We're confirming that it's SV76 out of SV94. I don't oftentimes type out the whole set because sellers don't sometimes only put the first part, because Sylveon is SV76 out of the full set of 94. So sellers who don't put the second part may not show up if you type in the whole thing. So we're going to put Sylveon and we're going to do SV76 on eBay. So we're going to select that. And it's going to show you listed prices. So these are what you can buy them for this very moment. The first thing we're going to see is we don't know what condition these cards are in. Sometimes people will list it in the description. Sometimes people will list it in the title itself. eBay has started to try to get sellers to list the condition of their cards and whether or not they're graded. We're not going to worry about that this second because we don't really care about listed prices. We want to look at sold listings. So we're going to go down on the left-hand column here. We're going to click sold items. So this is what things have actually sold for. So we see a sale right here for $65 plus $8 shipping. So that's a $73 sale. So that's already more than $20 less than the $99 we saw on TCG. So let's go ahead and click into this. If the seller has listed a condition of near mint or better. Like we talked about, everyone's opinion of these ratings are up to them at the end of the day. So we're gonna take a look at the actual pictures, and luckily on eBay it zooms in pretty much. So not the best lighting on a photo, but nothing is distinctly sticking out from like damage or any severe scratches or anything like that. I'm gonna look at the edges. Doesn't look at anything as peeling or starting to like come up off the cardboard. So I'm gonna say the front looks pretty good. And that's a lot of times the case, and where you see damage and wear is on the back. So let's take a look at the back. Again, we're gonna look at our edges here. Nothing crazy, actually looks pretty decent. Not seeing anything. Because of the lighting, this kind of right side looks like it's severely whitened, but I highly doubt that's the case, and I have a feeling it's just the light reflecting on kind of the slight gloss of the card finish. So I would say, just from a precursory glance, this card looks near mint. $65 plus $8 shipping, $73. If that's what one is sold for, we can go back to sold listings. We've got a graded card. We've got another one that sold for $75, ignoring the graded. So that's two sales around that $73 to $75 mark. So I would say that that's probably what I would be comfortable with as the value of this Sylveon. So that would be my process for a modern card. Most of the time, the market price on TCG Player is going to be higher than the listed prices. So let's look at, very quickly, just a Charizard GX card, GM. A Charizard GX card. Let's look at this one from Burning Shadows. So the market price is $12.20. And that's Chinese. That's Chinese. Damage. Let's list near mint. Chinese. Near mint, $10.49, $99.99. $10.49.99 shipping. So we'll just say $12. $10.50 plus a buck, $11.50. It's about $12. So a little lower than the $12.20, not too far off. But in this case, instead of going to eBay and saying what's the actual true value, I would be comfortable saying there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, this whole first page is sellers with this card in near mint at that kind of $11 to $12 mark. So I'd be comfortable kind of saying that's where I would see the value for that card. So that's modern. Modern and ultra modern, you can do that sort of process to identify the value of it. The key is really that condition, right? Because you can see a damaged card. Let's undo this filter. A damaged card is like half the price. So you see $4.92, $1.22 shipping, $6 versus $12 or $11. So that's where condition really comes into play. So now let's talk about vintage. If I type in Charizard to get to a base set number 4 or number 3, awkward. No, number 4. What is number? Oh, Legendary Collection. So base set, that's base set 2. Do we see a regular base set? That's all right. We'll use base set 2. All right. So first and foremost, vintage, identifying the condition is sometimes a lot more difficult just because of the age of the cards and the production. Modern cards are usually a little easier to really tell the condition of, and a lot of times they're closer to near mint because they're not as old as some of the vintage cards. And we're going to start to see pretty severe variations between condition prices. You've got damaged as low as $484 and damaged as high as $93, so there's a $10 difference. You've got heavily played at $96. Then you have some damaged ones that are higher than heavily played. So you start to get into this weird pricing structure where you start to see the conditions start to overlap and jump all over the place. The biggest issue is there's just not enough inventory on TCG of vintage stuff to really get a good feel for the true value of the card. So in this scenario, what I would do is I wouldn't have even come to TCG Player to look at this Charizard. I would have gone straight to eBay, and I would go Charizard base set, or actually we don't even need to type that in, but we know it's 004 out of, let's see, out of 130. All right, so we're already filtered on sold, and you want to make sure that that's still the case. And you can tell that it's sold listings because the numbers are green. When you see something that has or best offer, you want to be careful. I'm going to see if I can find one that has okay, yes, perfect. So some of them you'll see have a price and a strike through. And what that means is that this card sold, but it's sold because there was an offer submitted and accepted. And eBay does not show what the card actually sold for. So in this scenario, what you'd have to do is go to a website called 130point.com. You're going to click on search eBay sales. And you're going to type in the same thing you typed in on eBay. Charizard 004 out of 130. And you're going to come down here and you're going to find, so we saw that this one was stricken through, but it actually sold for 150. And we're going to go down to the one that we saw for best offer. So here it is. So it was listed at 150, which we see shown up here, but it actually sold for 135. You just need to be careful if you see cards with a price and a strike through, you have to go to 130 point and figure out what it actually sold for. So we can see, and actually 130 points good for just looking at the values as well. But I want to be able to like quickly click into stuff. So we have a base set 2 Charizard. The thing about Charizards, there's a lot of copies that look the same. These very first two are actually different, right? So this is Charizard from base set, and this is Charizard from base set 2. And you can tell because it has a 2 right here in the corner. So we have a base set 2 that we're trying to sell. So we can say, okay, here's one that sold for 125. So let's click in. And the slightly annoying part is now we have to look at this card's condition and compare it to our own. So we're gonna look in here and we're gonna say, okay, well, I can already see all this scratching on the foil here. The edges look okay. There's like some grime on it that could be a scratch. The back, you've got scratching on it. You've got some whitening on the corner here. Some whitening there. So, yep, some whitening here. So what I would do is I would look at my card and I would say, how much whitening is on the back of mine compared to this one? I'll look at the front and say, what do the scratches look like compared to mine? We can see that they are considering this card as moderately played. I would probably agree with that. This probably has some pretty significant scratching on the foil, and it's got some pretty distinct, like large white spots on the corners and edges. So if you had looked at your Charizard and said, I think mine's moderately played, the condition is about the same as this one, you know, that gives you one data point, and you might need to continue to search and say, okay, well, let me go to another one. Here's one that sold a little higher, 142 plus $5. Well, let's click into this one. They say this one's lightly played, which we know is the tier higher than moderately played. So let's click in here. Again, not the best lighting, but I'm not seeing as distinct and clear scratches on the foil, so slightly cleaner foil. You can see some silvering along the edge, though. We didn't see that on the last one at the top here. This front corner is pretty bad, I would say. You've got a ding right here. That is potentially a crease, or like the paper paint has started to bubble. So that's actually pretty bad to see. Let's look at the back. Yeah, I don't know that I would... Oh yeah, this is not lightly played. I would say that this card is in worse condition than the one we just saw. And this one sold for higher. So that's the name of the game when it comes to vintage. So now you've got a card here that, I mean, yeah, look at this whitening. That it sold for more, but is in worse condition than the card we just looked at. It sold for $20 more. So you could make the argument that your card that you have, even if it's in the condition of this one that sold for less, is actually worth $142 or $147 or more. So you got to play around with it a little bit. You got to use sold listings. It's a pain in the butt, but you got to compare your condition to the condition of sold cards. This is why I like PSA and graded cards, because it takes all the guesswork out. If you have a graded card, let's say we have this same Charizard. We're going to just say Charizard 004. Let's say we had it in a PSA 7 or PSA 6. Now we can go and search. There's not a lot of them here. This isn't base set 2, but we'll use the regular base set as an example. So now if I have a regular base set Charizard and a PSA 6, I can come here and I can say, okay, here's a PSA 6 that sold for $250. Here's one that sold for $200. Here's one that sold for $250. You know, we might need to look at 130 point just to confirm these sales, but you don't have to compare conditions because your card is the same grade. And so that's why I like to deal with graded cards, because it takes all of the guesswork out of conditions. But if you just found your collection, or if you have cards that you just don't know how to value at, this is the process you have to go through. So that's what I would normally do for vintage and modern. The one thing I'll say is I don't use any sort of price aggregation when I'm doing my research. So there are people who will say that they use something called price charting. Let's take a quick look at price charting. Price charting aggregates sales. So Charizard number 4. And it says, okay, ungraded, this card is $212. And then in some graded values here. And what it does is it scans sales for this card. What I don't know for sure is how well it does designated whether or not someone's title is accurate. So we clicked into the base set original Charizard, and if someone had, and that is the same number as base set 2. They're both number 4. And so if someone has put a base set 2 Charizard in a listing, but has put the wrong title, I don't know if a site like this will grab that listing and put it into the aggregation. So I don't use price charting. I think there's another one called maven.io or something like that. I usually try to go and look at a couple of examples on eBay myself, just because I'm not 100% sure on this. So I don't use any sort of price aggregation. But yeah, so I'm gonna say it's that easy. I'm doing air quotes, you can't see me. It's that simple. But yeah, I mean, all it takes is, the biggest thing is you gotta search for the right card. On TCG Player, you don't type in the set number. You kind of just need to find the card. So if we type in Charizard, we might be able to type in 4. Let's see. Yeah, so if we type in 004, probably nothing's gonna come up. Yeah, or the wrong cards came up, right? So what if we do Charizard 4? 40, let's just do Charizard 4. So a bunch of stuff came up anyway. So I would just type in Charizard, and then I would find the right card. But you need to make sure it's the right set. So do you have a base set 2? Do you have a regular base set? Do you have an Evolutions? And make sure that set number matches up. Again, a bad example because we wouldn't be looking at vintage cards on here, but even for modern stuff. And then on eBay, you do want to type in a set number. So we would type in like Charizard 4. If you know the set, you can type it in. So let's say that we had a Lugia. I don't know the number off the top of my head. We're going to type in Neo, because Lugia from Neo Genesis. And we can see here's the Lugias from Neo that have popped up. And then we can, if we want to be a little more, we can come in and say, okay, oh, it's a 9 out of 111. So we could say Lugia 9 out of 111 and not type in Neo if we don't know the set. So if you don't know the sets, which you might not, so if you look at this Lugia and you say, I have no idea what set this from, there's the set symbol, but that doesn't help you, right? So yeah, use the set numbers to figure out what card you have, and then you can figure out the value. So that's what I have for you. Hopefully this helps. I've had a lot of people reach out to me, questions about how the heck do I figure out how much my cards are worth. I have, honestly have no idea. I'll give you one tidbit though. If you have vintage stuff, it's very rare that non-holos hold a lot of value. So if you just want to start trying to get your hands around all of this, start with the foil cards. looking those up, trying to figure out if you can kind of figure out the value for them. And then you can start to work your way through some of the non-holographic cards. But like I said, a lot of the times those aren't going to hold a ton of value. Keep an eye out for another tutorial. I'm going to show how to submit cards to PSA. That is going to be simply how to navigate their website, how to get a submission together, and how to ship it. It's not going to be talking about what condition you should be looking for. Do I think this is a PSA 7 or 8? I don't know if I'm gonna make a video like that quite yet. But anyway, that's what I got for you today. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and smash that like button. It really helps me out. If you like this sort of content, go ahead and subscribe to my channel so you get notified when I post new videos. See you in the next one. Peace.